Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something uncomfortable? Not because you had to, but because you chose to. Most people don't realize this, but one of the most dangerous places to live is in comfort. Yeah, it sounds strange. We spend our lives working hard, trying to get to a place where we can finally relax. I did it too. I had built the career, the family, the legacy, and by the time I was in my 60s, people around me were saying, "Arnold, you've done it all. Just enjoy yourself now." And I'll admit it, for a while I listened. I started letting my guard down. I wasn't training with the same fire. I slept in more often. I told myself, "You've earned this." But something didn't feel right. There's a difference between resting and drifting. And slowly, I started drifting. Not in a dramatic way. No crash, no breakdown. Just a slow, quiet erosion of that inner fire. It's subtle. You don't notice it at first. You feel a little less sharp. You lose a little edge. You start living in the past, your former victories, your old stories. You become a museum of who you used to be. And that's not who I am. That's not who any of us are meant to be. You see, I've always believed life is about forward motion. It's about earning it every day, not resting on what you've already done. I didn't become a champion because I coasted. I became one because I chased discomfort like it owed me something. And then one morning, sitting at my kitchen table, drinking my coffee, I had a realization. If I wanted to feel alive again, if I wanted to wake up with that fire in my chest, I had to do something that would challenge me again. Not because I needed to prove anything to the world, but because I needed to prove something to myself. So I did the simplest, hardest thing I could think of. I set my alarm clock for 4 a.m. No fanfare. No big announcement. Just a quiet, personal decision. I was going to stop letting comfort win. I was going to beat the sunrise out of bed, every day, for 30 days. Why 4 a.m.? Because it's when the world is still asleep. It's when the only thing that gets you out of bed is your willpower. And I wanted to know if mine was still there. Let me tell you something. When that alarm went off on day one, my first instinct was to hit snooze. I stared at the ceiling in the dark and thought, "What the hell are you doing, Arnold? You're 60-something years old. Who are you trying to impress?" But then I remembered the cold gym back in Austria. No heat. No mirrors. Just iron and discipline. I remembered the teenage kid who used to walk through snow just to lift weights. Not for money. Not for fame. Just for the love of pushing limits. And that voice came back. The same one that's been with me all my life. You have to earn it. That voice got me out of bed. That voice got me started. And I'll tell you something right now. I didn't know it then, but that decision, that alarm clock, was about to rewire my entire life. This is where the story begins. Not with a championship. Not with a blockbuster film. It begins in the dark. At 4 a.m. It begins when comfort becomes the enemy, and you choose to fight anyway. The morning I set my alarm for 4 a.m., I didn't tell anybody. Not my team. Not my family. Not even my dog. This wasn't a publicity stunt. It wasn't about Instagram or proving something to the world. It was personal. I needed to see if the fire was still there. Not the fire for fame or politics or applause, but the inner fire. The one that got me through freezing mornings in Graz when all I had was a barbell, a dream, and my own stubborn discipline. When that alarm rang, it cut through the darkness like a blade. And I'll be honest with you, my first instinct was to turn over and pretend I didn't hear it. That warm bed, that quiet house, that little voice saying, "You're old enough to rest now." But I'd heard that voice before. And I've learned something over the years. The voice of comfort is always the loudest right before the breakthrough. So I got up. I didn't bounce out of bed like I was 20. My knees cracked. My back ached. But I swung my legs over the side, stood up, and walked into the kitchen in silence. No music. No distractions. Just the hum of the fridge and the sound of my breath. I poured a black coffee, stared out into the stillness of the morning, and said to myself, "You're back at the bottom of the mountain. Now climb." That first day was hard. But I did it again the next day. And the next. By the end of the first week, something strange started to happen. I stopped dreading the alarm. I started looking forward to it. Why? Because at 4 a.m., the world is silent. There are no emails, no headlines, no demands. It's just you and your choices, you and your potential. You see, discipline creates space. Space for clarity, for peace, for movement. I was no longer starting my days reacting. I was leading them. I had hours of quiet to think, to train, to reflect. It reminded me of the discipline I lived by when I was building my body, brick by brick. The same structure I had when I was writing speeches as governor. That kind of discipline doesn't just give you a better morning, it gives you a stronger identity. And I know what you might be thinking. But Arnold, I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not a movie star. That's not the point. You're you. You've lived, you've seen pain, you've had victories and regrets. But here's the truth I rediscovered during those mornings. You're not too old to start again. You're too comfortable to believe you still can. That's the trap I was in, believing that because I had achieved, I no longer had to earn. But that's a lie. You always have to earn it. Every day. The alarm clock doesn't care how many trophies you have. It just asks one question. Will you rise, or will you snooze your potential away? So I kept going. Day 10. Day 15. By day 20, I wasn't just waking up early. I was waking up to who I really was again. Not the public figure. Not the politician. The man. The man who still had more to give. Those 30 days weren't about being perfect. I had rough mornings. I had doubts. But every single day, I showed up. I showed up for myself. And there's no greater feeling than that. By the end of it, I wasn't just a man who woke up early. I was a man who reclaimed control. Who said, no more drifting. And here's what I want to say to you, especially if you're over 60. You don't need a massive transformation. You just need one decision. One step. 4 a.m. Because sometimes, the smallest act of discipline is what unlocks the biggest parts of your life. The first few mornings were hell. Let me be honest with you. Waking up at 4 a.m. sounds impressive in theory. But in practice, it's a war. A quiet, personal war fought in the dark, between who you are and who you want to become. When that alarm went off those first days, I felt every year in my bones. My body didn't bounce like it used to. My joints were stiff. My mind begged for comfort. And the worst part, no one else was watching. There was no spotlight, no competition. No applause. Just me. Alone in the dark. But something happens in that silence. Something powerful. You start to hear yourself again. Not the noise of the world. Not the headlines. Not the doubts. Just you. And that voice inside that never really left you. For me, it was the voice I first heard as a teenager in Austria, standing in a cold gym with frost on the windows and calluses on my hands. The voice that whispered, you have to earn it. That voice came back, clearer than ever. And it didn't shout, it challenged me. Are you still willing to suffer for your goals? Are you still hungry? Are you still the kind of man who does hard things, not because he has to, but because he chooses to? And let me tell you, those mornings became my mirror. Not the one in the bathroom, but the one in my soul. What I saw wasn't the old champion or the movie star. What I saw was a man with work left to do. A man who wasn't finished yet. So I kept showing up. I trained in silence. No music. No cameras. Just the rhythm of my breath and the clanging of iron. And as I moved, I wasn't chasing a number on a barbell. I was chasing discipline. Because that's what those dark hours really teach you. Discipline is earned, not remembered. You don't get to keep it just because you had it once. You have to rebuild it. Repave it, reclaim it, every single day. And here's something else I realized during those lonely hours. Pain isn't the enemy. Discomfort isn't the enemy. The real enemy is numbness, the slow fading of drive, the dulling of purpose, the belief that just because you're older, you're done. But you're not done. You see, at 4 a.m., the world is quiet, but your soul is loud. And if you listen closely, it will tell you the truth. You're still alive. You still have fire, and you still have more in the tank. It was in that war, dragging myself out of bed, lifting when no one was watching, thinking when the rest of the world was sleeping, that I sharpened my mind again. Discipline became my sword. Reflection became my shield. And the darkness? It became my ally. I wasn't just fighting the fatigue of age. I was fighting the belief that my best was behind me. And every time I won that battle, I came back a little stronger. Stop, stop, stop. Before we continue, I want to take a brief pause. Let me know in the comments, where are you watching or listening from? And have you ever experienced something similar in your own life? A moment when you realized something had to change? If this story speaks to you, I invite you to subscribe. There's more to come, and I'd be honored to have you on this journey. Now, let's continue. By the second week, I realized something important. I wasn't just waking up earlier. I was waking up different. This wasn't a change in routine. It was a change in identity. You see, the 4 a.m. alarm was just the trigger. What followed? That was the real transformation. I started training harder, not because I needed to prove anything, but because I wanted to feel strong again. Physically, mentally, spiritually. Every rep, every drop of sweat became a message to myself. You still have power. You still have control. You still have more to give. But it wasn't just about the body. In those quiet morning hours, I started asking bigger questions. What kind of man do I want to be now? What kind of example do I want to set? Not just for the public, but for my kids, my grandkids, for myself. Where am I headed? Not as a name people recognize, but as a human being. I began journaling. Nothing fancy. Just a few pages a morning. Reflections. Thoughts. Lessons. Goals. And something amazing happened. Clarity. Not just clarity about what I wanted to do that day. Clarity about what mattered. I had spent decades chasing big wins, trophies, titles, box office numbers, approval. But what I realized in those early hours was this. The biggest victories come from the smallest decisions, repeated with purpose. I started planning my days with intention again. Not just filling time, but using it. I blocked out hours for training, reading, connecting, creating. And I protected those hours like gold. Because when you wake up before the world, you get to decide who you are, before anyone else tries to tell you. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when you move with purpose. You don't feel rushed. You don't feel scattered. You're not reacting to life. You're leading it. And I know what you're thinking. Arnold, isn't it too late to start building something new? My answer is simple. No. It's too late only if you stop building. I've seen men in their 70s start writing their first books. I've watched women in their 80s take their first fitness classes. Purpose doesn't retire. And neither should you. This new foundation I was laying, it wasn't made of brick and mortar. It was built from mindset, from intention, from consistency. And the best part? It didn't take hours. It took discipline. It took waking up, grabbing that first moment of the day, and saying, "This is mine. I choose who I become." That's how you rebuild. That's how you stay alive, truly alive, even in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. You don't need to climb the same mountain again. But you do need a new summit, a new challenge, a new why. And once you find it, you'll realize there's still more left to build. At first, waking up at 4 a.m. was a challenge. Then it became a habit. And then, something unexpected happened. It became freedom. I know that sounds backwards. Most people think discipline is restrictive, like it's a punishment. But the truth is, real discipline liberates you. Because when you're disciplined, you're not a prisoner of circumstance anymore. You're not reacting to the world. You're shaping it. I started noticing it everywhere. The way I moved through the day. The clarity I brought into every room. The strength I felt when I chose what mattered over what was easy. It was like flipping a switch. This wasn't just about getting up early. It was about taking control again. You see, after 60, it's easy to drift. I've felt it myself. People stop expecting things from you. The world says, "You've done enough." And little by little, you start believing it. You slip into the routine, the same breakfast, the same chair, the same conversations. You stop chasing. You stop growing. But let me tell you something. Routine without purpose is decay. That's when I realized something critical. Just because society tells you to slow down doesn't mean you have to. You don't have to fade. You don't have to disappear. And I wasn't the only one who saw that. Around that time, I reconnected with a few old friends, guys in their 70s, some in their 80s, who were still pushing, still learning, still lifting, still dreaming. One of them had just started a non-profit. Another had picked up the guitar for the first time in his life. Another was teaching fitness classes to veterans. And every single one of them had the same attitude. We don't slow down. We level up. They weren't clinging to their past. They were building new futures. And I saw it in their eyes. Not the tiredness of age, but the fire of purpose. It inspired me. It reminded me that we are not our birth dates. We are our decisions. And every day you choose to show up, to challenge yourself, to chase something meaningful, you are alive. I looked at these men and I said, I want that too. Not the titles, not the trophies. The vitality, the spirit, the fight. That's what discipline gives you. Not just structure, but identity. When you wake up early, when you train with intent, when you set goals even after everyone says you've earned the right to coast, you are choosing life. And let me tell you something. There is no feeling more powerful than being the one who decides how your story continues. So I kept going. Not because I had to, but because I could. That's the real freedom. Not retirement. Not comfort. But knowing that even now, especially now, you can still rewrite your future. You just have to be willing to do the work. And it starts with one choice. Discipline over comfort. Purpose over routine. Fire over fading. If you're over 60 and you feel invisible, tired, stuck in a routine that no longer excites you, I want to tell you something. Wake up. Literally. Wake up before the world does. Before the noise, before the distractions, before the doubts have a chance to speak. Wake up and take back your life. That's what those 30 days taught me. I didn't just win the battle with the alarm clock. I won the battle with something far more dangerous. The quiet voice that whispers, "You're done. You're not done. You're not even close." We spend so much of our lives building careers, families, reputations. And then, somewhere along the way, people start telling us to slow down, to rest, to retire. But I've learned that the most dangerous thing about aging isn't the body. It's the mindset. You stop setting goals. You stop chasing growth. You start living in the rearview mirror. But life was never meant to be watched from a rocking chair. Every single morning you wake up, you have a decision. Will I fade? Or will I fight? Not against others. Against complacency. Against regret. Against the idea that your best is behind you. Let me be clear. My journey didn't end with championships or movie sets or speeches from behind a podium. It continues, right here, in the silence of 4 a.m., when the only thing that gets you out of bed is your purpose. In those early hours, I remembered who I was. And more importantly, I remembered who I still wanted to be. You don't need six-pack abs. You don't need a big audience. You don't need permission. You just need one decision to stop surrendering your time to routine and start building again, from the inside out. Start small. Wake up early. Move your body. Write down one thing that still matters to you. One goal. One dream. One thing you've been putting off because you thought it was too late. Because here's what I know, and I've lived it. It's not too late. It's never too late. You're not finished unless you decide to be. I'm not done. Not even close. And neither are you. So if you're listening to this right now, and something in you feels that spark, that small voice saying, maybe there's more for me, you're right. There is. Now go get it. Stay hungry. No more excuses. Get to work. I'd love to hear what you think about this story. Have you ever felt like comfort was holding you back? Maybe you've had a moment, or a decision, that helped you break free. Share it in the comments. Your story might be the spark someone else needs. You matter. Your journey matters. And I believe in every single one of you watching this. If this message spoke to you, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful story. Have a great day, and remember, you're not done. If you watched until the end, type this in the comments so I know you're part of the inner circle. No more excuses. I'm not done.